Hello everyone, so this is our first video on using assemblies in Onshape, and so today we're going to be going over getting access to the FTC Parts Library. Already done that in a way, but we're going to do it a different way just to give ourselves some options, and then figure out how to use the insert tool, try out a couple of mates, and just some actions that you can do in uh, assembly and Onshape in general. So let's get into it. So for the last couple of videos, we've been going pretty deep into how to use Part Studio, and that's great and all, but there's also this whole other facet of Onshape called assemblies. And so, like I said in my video about uh, how to use Onshape in general, uh, I'll have the links in the description. But essentially, in Onshape, you make parts in Part Studios, and then you uh, connect them in some way, like relative to one another in assemblies. And so that's what we're going to be doing in this video. But before we get into using assemblies per se, uh, there is some just business we need to take care of first. And so, if you have watched my previous video on setting up Onshape, you'll know that I asked you to uh, uh, get this insert tool, uh, get that from the Onshape store, kind of. There's kind of some annoyances with this. First of all, there's this weird loading screen, and it's structured kind of weirdly. So the other way to get parts into an assembly is using the insert tool. But to be able to do that, you basically have to get access to the FTC parts library, and thing is that's actually pretty easy to do. So that's what I'm just going to be walking you through here. Firstly, you just want to search up like FTC parts library or something, and then should be like the first thing that comes up, introduction to the FTC parts library, and here we are. So it's made by people from a couple of teams, and it's really great because it just has all the main parts from FTC vendors all in one place, so you can get them really easily without having to like go around downloading them, which is kind of annoying. Uh, Okay, so the way you want to get access to this parts library is by sending an email to first@ptc.com, as it says right here. And so when you're sending this email, you're going to make sure you use the email that is associated with your Onshape account. So if you log in to uh, Onshape as blah 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 at outlook.com, you want to use the same blah 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 at outlook.com email when you are sending an email to first@ptc.com. So uh, go ahead and do that, and they should hopefully give you access to the parts library within a day or two. Uh, I'm gonna assume you've completed that, and now we can get into working with the assembly. So the first thing I kind of want to show you here, and kind of alluded to this previously, is how to get parts into the assembly. And so there are kind of two ways to do that. One way, the main way that Onshape designed is insert, and then you also have the insert tool that is made by the FTC Parts Library. And so firstly, I'll just quickly run through what the insert tool looks like because we can use it to get most of the parts that we're going to need here. Uh, and so in the insert tool, I know there are a bunch of different boxes, but the ones you need to be concerned about is basically just one. And that's the global libraries button right here. You can click on that, and then it will bring you to a page with all the different vendors, and then you can like go into each of them. Like I clicked on Go Builda, and then it'll open up everything, and then we can just run through that and select parts that way. And the other way to get parts in, and this is the one I personally use, but again, personal preference, uh, is the insert tool. And so if I click on it here, you will probably start in the current document page. And so this shows all the parts and other assemblies that you have in your current document. So right now, my document is demo, and there's nothing in it, as you can see here. But if I were to make some sort of part in Part Studio 1, then that part would show up here and it would be available for me to select and insert into this assembly. And same thing with other assemblies. What that means is that you can actually put assemblies in assemblies, and that's a really great tool for organization, and we're gonna kind of touch on that a little later in this video. But anyway, this is how you access stuff within your document. Now, if you want to get stuff from the FTC Parts Library, you're of course gonna have to go into other documents because, it's their files. And here, there's a bunch of stuff, but the one you want is the FTC Robotics Parts Users, which you have hopefully gotten access to if you have sent an email to the email address that I talked about earlier. But if you click on it, it will then show you a list kind of similar to the one you saw in the insert tool, except there are also a bunch of weird files that people have inserted or added to the uh, team or folders. But anyway, you can kind of ignore those for the time being. And we're just going to go straight into the Go Build a folder. And then let's do structure. And so in this case, at least for the Go Build a folder, it is organized in a way similar to the gobuilda.com website. And so if you are using GoBuilda parts, then this should be pretty familiar to you if you've, run around their website before. So I'm going to go into structure and then let's see, get some channel. And here there are a couple of options. Either we can go and individually select different lengths of U channel, or we can um, grab a configurable U channel. So let's try to go with the configurable U channel. And so here, the process is kind of the same if you got like a raw U channel, like just a generic, like a specific U channel instead of this generic U channel, uh, except for this drop-down list here. So this drop-down list is a configurable, uh, this thing here, a configuration, and so you can like have different versions of things. So in this case, we're just gonna get in a one whole U channel, and then just you can click either here or here, uh, and just drop it in. So I've clicked on it once, and then I'm just bringing my cursor in here, and then clicking again, and there we have it, U channel. Seems I've zoomed out a lot, so probably want to zoom in just to get like actually be able to see it. But the dimensions should be all right. Uh, and of course, we also want some screws that we can randomly attach onto our U channel for the purposes of a demonstration. So let's go get that too from the hardware folder, and then screws, and um, let's use socket head screws. Those are the ones that come with the starter kit. Uh, and so you can see there is a socket head configurable, but just to show you what a non-configurable file looks like, just head in here and maybe get some 8mm screws. 8mm would be nice. There we go. And you can see it's kind of similar, just without the configuration dropdown. So I can just click on it and bring one in. And so that's importing stuff from the FTC Parts Library or any other document you may have. And finally, the last tab here is standard content. And from here, we're just going to import another socket head screws. That looks kind of similar to what we're looking for. Yeah, there we go. That looks pretty close to what we're looking for. So yeah, I think we can go ahead and just um, insert that in, and then you have like the size option and stuff. So normally I just use this for inserting screws, but there's probably some other stuff you could also get in as well, like O-rings and washers and that sort of stuff. So just general hardware. And length, just you want it to be 8mm. Thread length also 8mm, and finish plain doesn't really matter. Uh, and we can just hit insert, and then I'm moving my mouse over here, not clicking or holding or anything, and then I just click again and it inserts the part. And now that we have that done, we're going to want to click the confirm button up here, green confirm button. If you click the red X, it will like delete your insertions, and then it's kind of annoying, have to start again. But anyway, we now have all this stuff in here. So the first thing you might notice is that these weird mate connectors are showing up. and you'll kind of figure out what they are later, but basically, for now, we can just kind of hide them. We don't really need to use them. So we can right click and then say hide all mate connectors, or you can hit the keyboard shortcut K, I believe. Yeah, that's what it is. So K, that's the other option you have there. Okay, but anyway, we have this stuff going around here now. The first thing we can do is try out a fastened mate. So fastened mate is what you find up here. M is the keyboard shortcut, but you can click on it, or I'll use the keyboard shortcut. And essentially, how mates function is you have at least two, in some mates more than that, mate connectors, uh, and or like I don't know, mates differ, but essentially you normally will have two mate connectors. So here I can just select, I'll drag my mouse around. I'm not clicking or holding. I'm just moving my mouse around. As you move, it'll like select different mate connectors. If I get close to this hole, it'll show me this mate connector that's like on the outside of this hole. And if I hold it on this plate, this face, it will show that there is something coming up in the middle right there, right? And so I can select that, and I'm gonna actually mate it to the origin, fasten it to the origin, right? And it'll show a mate connector on the origin. Click there, and then you're gonna want to confirm the the fastened mate either using the button here or here. Uh, and so we can just go ahead and confirm it, and now we have this thing fastened. And there's a pretty good explanation, I believe, of uh what each of the mates do, and also the diagrams are pretty useful to be honest. But essentially, fasten mates does exactly what you would expect. It fastens two things, they don't move relative to each other in any direction. Uh, so that's that, right? And let's say I decided I don't actually want this mate here because I don't know, I want the U channel to be floating around in space. Uh, I can always come back here and just select this or right click on it and hit delete. And that will get rid of the fasten mate, and now I am able to grab and drag around the U channel like one would expect. So the next thing we can try to do is just attaching, maybe we want to try to fasten some of these screws to this U channel right over here. So one way we can do that is going to start another fasten mate, uh, and do kind of the same thing we did earlier, which is just hover around and until you find the right uh, mate connector, right? Because you want to find the mate connector that does what you actually want it to do. So I'm selecting this one here, and then I'll come over and hover over this hole right here, and then just hit it, and now it has applied the fastened mate, just it's kind of simulating what it would look like. Um, and there are a couple of options here. I can flip the primary axes, flip the secondary axes, reorient it, and then animate the mate degrees of freedom. So flipping the primary axis essentially does this. It just changes the direction in which the mate is applied. And then the secondary axis uh, is less obvious, but essentially uh, it will spin uh, the objects relative to one another. So if you can see from the mate connector here, the as I hit reorient secondary axes, it's actually rotating. And that's pretty much what the reorient secondary axes thing does. Finally, animate mate degree of freedom. In this case, it does nothing um, because it's a fastened mate. But if we were to use any other mate that allows for some amount of movement, then the uh, animate mate degree of freedom thing would actually show us something. And now we can hit confirm, and that screw is fastened securely in place by a computer. Uh, and then we can do the same thing here with this one, except, and you see, this is one of the tricky things about screws, uh, is that they have like a weird mate connector location, right? You just want to make sure that the mate connector is actually where you want it to be. So in this case, if I hover over this section here, uh, it is giving me a mate connector that is slightly offset. And then when I hover over this circle on the outside, the perimeter, it gives me a different mate connector. You can see it kind of moving, right? And so in the bigger scheme of things, it doesn't really matter most of the time, but sometimes you have to be really careful around what mate connector you're actually trying to select. So I'll just select this and take it over here, and let's say I actually want to put it, I'll put it here. Okay, cool. And one thing, we can see off the bat is that with the one part I kind of didn't show you here, major part is that there's this drop-down list that shows you all the different mate types. So even if you selected the wrong mate type, you can always just change it. So in this case, I could change it to like slider, and then we can see what the slider mate actually does. So now that we've selected it to slider, we can hit animate mate degrees of freedom, and it just shows you what the slider mate lets the screw do. So it lets the screw move back and forth along the uh, z-axis, to be precise, the mate connector z-axis, as you can see here. So that's what slider mate would do, and then cylindrical, if we were to animate the same thing, it would also show you that the screw is also allowed to rotate relative to the U channel. So with that done, we can now just confirm that, although we might want to change it to fastened first. But pretty much that's how you use mates. It's honestly not that complicated. Uh, it's just you pick the mate that's right for the job, and it just kind of does its thing, right? Uh, but one thing you can be careful about, and this is helpful with loading times. So, uh, as you can see from this screw here, this screw is the one we imported from the Go Build a Parts Library. And this is the one we imported from the standard section of the insert tool. So if I can just run to it real quick, it's the standard content, right? This is where that's where this screw came from. And so the reason that matters is because one, the standard content is often easier to access, but also, and this is the more long-term kind of reason why the standard content version is useful, is because the standard content one doesn't have threads. Meanwhile, the Go Builder screws are like actually the official CAD, and so they have like real threads and everything, and that looks great. But the problem it creates is that essentially when you have like a crap ton of screws in your assembly, uh, it will cause it will basically slow down your assembly because your computer is having to process and deal with more and more, edges and uh, and faces, that sort of thing, right? And so that's why it's often better to stick to the standard content. And that out of the way, we can now go to our kind of last bit about using assemblies, and that is the fix tool. And so what fix does is essentially, you remember how we initially, the first thing we did was we used a fasten mate to connect the U channel to uh, the origin right here, right? But if we didn't want to do that and we just wanted this to like not move, because one annoying thing is that uh, like let's say this U channel is like actually not supposed to move because we have other parts and all the parts are oriented relative to this. And trust me, when you get into larger assemblies and for some reason it is not actually fully constrained, it becomes really annoying when you're trying to add parts and suddenly your entire robot is like upside down. It's weird. So anyway, you want to fix the U channel. And so the way you do that is you can just right click on it and it'll give you the option fix. And what that does is that now it's fixed and it'll show that to you right here. Part is fixed. So now if you were to grab and try to move it, it would just tell you nuh-uh because it's fixed. So it fixes its position in the assembly and not relative to anything else. It is actually just stuck there. So that's pretty much how to use fix. And the last thing I want to talk about before we end this video is not directly related to assembly, but can be useful, and that is just working in this toolbar kind of taskbar here. Uh, is your um, you have this plus sign, and then you can insert new tabs. And so tabs, one of the more useful tabs is create folder. So if I were to create a folder and make it the folder one, just which is the normal name, and hit enter, I could now drag other tabs like my assembly and my part studio into that folder. And so now the folder 1 fittingly contains assembly 1 and part studio 1. And so now if I wanted to get everything out of there, I could right click on this assembly 1 and move to parent folder, which essentially just gets it out of folder 1. Uh, so if I were to hit that, it would then move out of folder 1 and out into the just out of folder 1, right? Uh, or the other option is you can right click on folder 1 and just unpack, which gets rid of the folder entirely and just leaves everything where the folder used to be. Anyway, that's it for this video. I hope you learned about how to use assemblies. In that you got access to the FTC Parts Library, you learned how to use the insert tool and the many ways you can add parts to an assembly, and then how to use mates in general, and then some actions like fixing parts and also using folders. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.